So hi everyone, I'm Alan John, and I actually had a lot of questions regarding debugging. So how do my value is not showing up on my front end. I can't figure out where this thing is going wrong. So how do I resolve that? So there are a couple of ways, but the most used way is using a debugger. So this is my code, and I've just created an simple Express app with a get root that's going to return this data. Okay, it's running on port 80, and I have a simple React app that's actually showcasing all the dates that's available. Okay, so this is my postman request. So if I do a send, I'll get this, and what I'm willing to show are these dates. So couple of ways. Like long before, what I used to do was, if I had an error like this, wherein this is my React app, and I don't see no dates here. How do I solve that? So the thing I used to do before was I'd just go down here and I would just do a console log, and I'll just log my response. I'll save it and I'll just go to my console and look at the values that's coming up over there. And that's not the correct way to actually do that. So what we can do is we can use the debugger. Okay, so debugging is nothing but it's like resume, pause and play, like a game, correct? So once you pause the game, nothing's actually essentially happening. If it's not a live game, if you pause it, so everything inside that game world is actually paused. If you go down to your stats, you can probably uh, look at your high scores and all the stats over there. Okay, so that's debugging. So you can pause up till a certain amount of like probably a line of code. So everything before that line's been executed, and everything afterwards would only be executed if you would like click on resume. Okay, so that's technically debugging. So our application actually has two layers. So we have the front end layer and the back end layer. So this is my back end and this is my front end. So what I like to do is, for the front end part, what I like to do is I use Chrome and the developer console over here because I feel that's more easier. And for the back end, I use the debugger over here. Okay, so let us just start with this debugging. So what I can do is I can just decide where do I actually pause the program. Okay, so let me just pause it uh, over here. Okay, and what I can do now is I can actually go and go to my debug, and I can just click on run and debug. Okay, so I can do Node.js here, and that's actually going to stop everything and it's just going to start debugging. Okay, so if I do that, okay, so since you have to stop your current running instance, so I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to do it again. And yes, so my backend debugger is live now. Okay, so if someone's actually going to hit this API point, okay, so if any applicant is actually going to hit localhost colon 80 and slash, my program's actually going to look for that root, which is this. And before executing it, it'll actually look at this red dot and it'll be like, okay, I got to wait, and it won't execute it. Let's look at it in action. So this is my postman. If I do send, okay, so I have to put it inside over here. Okay, so if I hit send, my debugger has essentially paused. Okay, so I've paused over here. So now the only way I can go forward is using this, which is continue, or this step over. So continuous, it'll actually skip everything below this. Okay, so it'll be like, okay, you just wanted me to pause over here. And if I click this, it will just resume the program execution normally. If you have other debug points, like if I have something over here, it should pause it over here as well if I just click continue. Okay. The next is step over. So what this does is this steps over this line and moves to the next line, next line, next line, next line. So if you have some values that you wish to debug over here, you can actually use this. Okay. Well, what does step into do? So step into is nothing. It just steps into this dot send method, which is native to JavaScript Express. So I won't be going inside that because that's not something I've defined. But if it's something that you have defined, probably a function, your custom function, you can just click step into and it will search where this function is. If I had my function down here, it will just search that function and it will come up over there, and then you can go step over line by line. Okay, so that's a couple of things. And this is step out, so that is nothing. If you're done with that function, if everything is working over there and you don't wish to continue further down, you can just step out. So you would step out to this point again. Okay, so basic controls there, you don't have to be worried about that. For beginning, like if you're a beginner, you can actually just keep on having a lot of debug points. Like since this is static text, it won't let me put debug points, but if it was logic, you can actually have a lot of debug points here, and you can just click on continue. You don't have to learn all these fancy functionality. Okay, so let me just click this, and now I'm here in my second debug point, and the benefit of this is now I can see what values is being sent. Okay, so RES stands for response, and let me see what value is the response. Okay, so what I can do is I can just hover down here as well, and I can see all the values down here. But a better approach would be just typing response here and pressing enter, and you can actually see the response over here. Okay, so these are all the parameters that I'm sending. Okay, so status code 200, it's okay, and all the other parameters. Okay, and if you want, you can actually look at the data as well here. You'll have to find the data key, and you'll actually see the data as well. Okay, so this is how you can actually do that backend debugging. Okay, suppose you have your data is reaching your backend, but the database is not writing that data. You might want to put a debug point just before your data is being written onto the Mongo or your SQL database. Okay, and once you put that debug point over there, your program will essentially pause over there, and you can actually see is the values that you're trying to write to your database correct, and you can troubleshoot like that. Okay, so that's all about your backend debugging. So let me just continue this, and I have my data fetched. Okay, so now let this keep on running, and let's put the front end debugger now. Okay, so backend works completely. We are getting a response code of 200, and like the data has been sent. Okay, now let's debug the front end. So we have ruled out backend being problematic. So let's look at the front end. So since I refreshed, my front end is actually making an API call back, and that's the reason we automatically were shifted to the VS Code tab. Okay, so play again, play again. Okay, let me just disable this. Play again, play again. Okay, so I just need one debug point because now we have understood there's nothing wrong over here. I just want to show that you can also keep both the debugging applications running side by side. Okay, so for the time being, I have taken off all debug points. I'll show that in the last. Okay, so I refreshed, still nothing. So I can go to the uh, inspect element or the developer console. Okay, so this is only there for Chrome, I believe, and Edge also. I think Firefox also has its own, but I like to use Chrome. So over here, you can actually first go to networks, and you can just hit refresh. So that's my previous debug point. So let me just remove that. Yeah, so you can just hit refresh, and you can actually see like my API call was successful. I actually have this like the data coming to my front end. something is going wrong between the data coming in and parsing on the front end side. Okay, so I've narrowed my error down to there. So what I can do now is, since I've confirmed network is working, I can go to source. Okay, so if you go to source, you will initially get this window, and this is essentially your React app. Okay, so you can see source app.js and all these files. Okay, this is my app. So what I can do now is I can actually open this app.js in this. Okay, so what I can do is I can hit Command P. Okay, so if I hit Command P, I'll get this open file window. Okay, and you can just search for app.js, and this is my app.js. If you don't want to use shortcuts, you can also go and do it the old school way. You can just search for all the files here and you can just manually open all files, but it takes a lot of time. Okay, so now this is where my response is being logged. Like this is where I'm actually calling the API, and this is where I'm actually getting my monthly time series, the data. So I can just hit refresh now, and this is Axios trying to get my data. If I go and hover on top of response, currently I get nothing because we are still here on line number 10th and the request has not yet been made. Okay, so just to prove that, I can just put response here, and uncaught reference cannot access response because it's not yet existing. Okay, now if I click this button, just like the Node.js debugger we had, I will be moving to the next point. And can you see response has some data? So this is when the response has been made and the data has been captured. Okay, so now I can go and I can hover on top of response. I can go and look at all the data that's been coming in. Okay, so this is all the data that I have. If you want to visualize this in a better way, you can go to console and you can just try to print out the current value of response, and this is the current value of response. So I have my metadata and I have my monthly space time space series. Okay, so this is my key and this is my value. Okay, so this is my key and this is my value, and I have all these states, and this is what is supposed to come, but it's not happening. Okay, so till this step everything is correct. Let me move a step further. Okay, so again this, and essentially this should actually have all of my dates correct. So let me see what values been printed when I try to put this in the console. It says undefined. That should not happen. So again, let me just see it over here. Monthly time series, and that's undefined. Okay, so I know where my application is breaking now, and why is it breaking? So I can look for errors. Okay. So it's monthly time series, and I missed out a space over here. A really easy example, but you get the idea. So I put a space, and I can save this. My React app loads again. Okay. And I can just refresh it over here. I get my dates. Okay. Let's look at everything in action now. So if I do this, if I hit play, and over here, I get my data now. And the only error was my key being wrong. Okay, so that's how you can actually use the debugger. Okay, now this is a really basic example, and if you have a complex app, you can also turn this like you can also debug both the layers simultaneously. Okay, so let me just put my debug point back again. So here, okay, here and here. Okay, so let's just debug again. Okay, so now when I refresh this, before I hit line number 11, my Node.js debugger should open because I'm making a request there. And since we have a breakpoint there, that should actually open up and I should hit continue there to actually get the response back here, correct? So we are pausing and playing. So let me just play. I get the response back. So because we have a stop there, so our program's like, okay, I can only give the response when the developer actually is going to play my layer. Okay, so if I just hit continue, only then I'll be getting the response back. And over here, I'm still paused. Okay, I cannot proceed further. Only if I have the response from here, I can actually proceed there. So I do this and I go back here. I do this and I get it again since we had it twice over here and we are on React strict mode, so it renders everything twice. So again, okay. Now I can just go and hit this and I get all of my data back here. Okay. So that's essentially how you can actually use the debugger, Chrome debugger for frontend and the Node debugger inbuilt with VS Code. You can actually use this to debug Node. You can also use this to debug the frontend, but that's something I've never used. And I always feel that frontend debugging is always better on Chrome because you can always have a lot of parameters there like network and everything. Okay, so if you have any doubts regarding debugging, you can always reach out to me. And if you're interested more in using the full potential of this debugger, you can actually reach out to me as well, and I can share resources wherein you learn how to use step over, step into, and all these other fancy buttons. Okay. Thank you for tuning in, and you guys have a nice day.